Hello, everybody. This is Pat Myers, and Emily Long is helping me out here on the broadcasting network of Zia Consulting. Since we can't see people live, we thought we would start something that would try to build a community and also just kind of give us something to do at lunch, and really hope to create some interesting dialogue around what people are trying to solve. And if I can't solve it, then I'll bring the right person on the next episode, if you will, and we'll try to figure it out. So that brings me to, who am I? I'm Pat Myers. I'm one of the co-founders of Zia Consulting, EVP, and more importantly, and pertinent to this conversation, I am the capture practice lead. So why are we having office hours? I started trying to figure out ways that we can start communicating during this pandemic and this quarantine and having everybody at home, and actually I find that the conversations that I'm having, people are getting very insightful and trying to solve problems and figuring out how we can be more effective in our daily work and jobs. So I thought that we would start this open dialogue and try to create a forum in which would enable people to ask questions and try to do some in real time, because I like to live like that and vicariously and unprepared, and we'll figure out where it goes from there. And the technologies that we're talking about are mostly focused around capture. Again, I can bring other people that have other specializations. I do have like 20 years of content management as well. I can talk at the high level, but of course I can get a lot deeper inside of the capture technologies. And so, how we're going to do that, this is informal. And so the questions are available on side of the GoToWebinar screen, and just ask questions in real time. We'll get to them. I would prefer this being your questions. I did prepare some content just to see if we can have 15 minutes if people just decide that they don't feel like discussing anything. And hopefully we can start gaining some momentum as we do this on a regularly scheduled Wednesday basis. So if you have other ideas about this, the way that we're going to do this, and the forum, or even the times, the days of the week, please let me know. I would rather have more people here than not, and want to keep it interesting. So let's just use this as a trial beta run, and then we'll see where we go from there. I thought that it would be interesting to start some of the echoing things that are going on within the technology stack that we're using. Try to broadcast some news to begin with. One of the things that's been going on is, since the release of Chrome 80, if a user, an operator, goes in and takes a batch instance and just opens it, and then typically what happens if they close that tab, that window, leave it, go to another one, then it unlocks and is available for the next operator. Since that version of Chrome, it leaves it locked. So this has been going on with several different customers, so I thought I'd talk about that for a little bit. So the workaround right now is don't use Chrome, or go to a previous version of Chrome. So we've been testing it out in IE and Edge, and everything's been working okay. So in case you're hitting that problem, you probably do that. I have been working with Ephesoft support and engineering. They have originally scheduled a fix in 2020.2, but of course I'm pushing hard for a hot fix. Chances are it's not going to go way back in time, but I'm hoping that we can at least support 2020.1 and 2019.2. If you guys have any concerns or questions about that, you can ask that now too. So inside of your sign up, you were able to ask your questions at that time. One of the questions was, will lunch be served? Yep, go make it. Hopefully you already ate or have it in front of you right now. And hopefully one of these times we can start taking a road show and we can give you some actual lunch. But I hope everybody is safe and well fed and well stocked up, and well toilet papered. But in any case, let's go to the next one. So this is an interesting question. Looking at Ephesoft to capture data off email and documents, we want a system that'll learn as it goes forward. How does Ephesoft process documents? And similar, but not the same. And do you have to set up every format? Okay, so I have about at least 3 different answers to this question. The first one is that Ephesoft isn't necessarily a fixed form processing engine, and so you can make up rules. And some of those rules are just in the fact of saying, okay, we'll look for something like subtotal or tax or total amount, and then be able to capture off of those. So in that way, it's not this fixed form process. So you're able to create these generic rules and be able to utilize those more than not. Of course, you'll have some exceptions to that, and so you can either deal with that with having operators deal with those exceptions. Of course, those have already implemented the technology. You all know that. For those that have not, that's something that you can do. You can use advanced reporting to find out where those exceptions are occurring and do some root cause analysis, and then be able to make some modifications to it. My second answer to that is that there is this machine learning aspect. There's kind of a couple. One of them specifically for invoices, and you can create some generic rules and say this is an ML class. And if people are really interested in that, I can go into that further in probably a different episode or a different day of this particular broadcast. But it gives you the capability of saying, that there's a certain amount of fields, and these fields have certain rules. And we haven't really been advising our customers to utilize that. We find that there's some issues around it learning the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, having more difficulty in adjusting the focus around that. So it's something that you can play with, and it might work for you, especially if you're trying to set something up quickly and then maybe migrate to something that it has specialization, customization, or configuration for you. But it's something that you can look at. My third answer to this question is the more based on the roadmap. The Ephesoft is coming out with this thing called Symantec, and it's cloud-based functionality around AI and ML. And that is going to firstly start getting focused in on invoice processing. Now, I've been working with them really closely because an invoice is not necessarily the only thing that is going through most people that are processing accounts payable. There's shipping notifications and order acknowledgments and other documentation. And so trying to figure out a way that they can use this and that. Know that the Symantec, which is something that I can, again, if people are interested, can go into more along those cloud strategies and what they consider these pillars that will get you up to a maturity level for a true digital transformation. They're going to bring some of those algorithms inside of Ephesoft. They're still balancing the fine act of, okay, if it's an on-prem solution or even a private cloud solution, how does this affect performance? And there's always a tug of war between performance and accuracy, and so that is something that we're not really sure how that's going to work, and that's something that they're doing. I believe that that's going to be out this year. I think as early as 2020.2 of Ephesoft Transact, which is due out inside of I believe June or July of this year. So more to come on that particular topic. But anyway, I hope that answers your question. If not, let's continue the dialogue and ask it here or ask it later, and we can get to exactly the right solution for you and the right answer, or at least give you some frame of what exactly you're looking for. So what other questions do you have? Before I go inside of anything that I have prepared, I wanted to see if there's any other questions, and I think there is one. Yes, that is the second edition. What has been added? So that is the first edition. That is the second edition, and it still needs to be updated. So that was way back in the day when we did version 3.0. So yeah, we've been doing this for a while. We actually were I think the second partner of Ephesoft I had taught the class, the certification class, and helped come up with that with Ike, and did that for the first 4 years, which turned into that 3.0. That's 4.0. It mostly was just around version changes of Ephesoft. Of course, we're now on 2020.1, and that still is applicable in how you do baseline configuration, but it didn't add on a lot of the different configurations. Like they modified the multi-dimensional classification. We don't really cover that. Cross-section extraction, we didn't really cover that in the book. One of my business partners, Mike, is always pressing me to update it, and I've been pressing against that. So I'm trying to, as hard as possible, not do that, but may happen one of these days. Got the other question of, is there a new one on the way? And it's not in the works, and we'll see who loses this battle between me and Mike. Okay, so far that's the questions that we have. Are there any other questions? I'm going to give you a few seconds to ponder that. And of course, even when I go into some of the things that I prepared to share with you, we can also divert from that and go to questions if you're thinking about that. So, all right. So those are the questions that have been asked so far. And so let's go ahead and go to some other things. For those that are on a previous version, I wanted to discuss, and I'll probably kind of discuss like a particular feature each week, just so we don't get too bogged down with this, roadmap or feature function kind of functionality. I'll try to keep it on various levels of topics. But one of the things that did come out inside of 2020.1, which is notable, is a true global batch class. And so prior to this version, they had a global batch class, but it didn't have any capability of being able to do configuration management. And what I mean by that is that if you had multiple systems, or so you have a development system, you have a staging system, you have a production system, once you make the modifications inside of that development server, and if you reference these global document types, you exported that, and it just became unto itself a new batch class with those document types. And so it wasn't referencing that global document type anymore. In 2020.1, they made a modification to that. Part of the modification is that now you can have a choice when you're exporting it, saying, do you want to wrap these in one batch class? So that was just a development optimization, so you can keep all the document types that you're reusing amongst multiple batch classes in a single location for development purposes, or do you want to really retain that for easier configuration management? So you have one library of document types, and those document types, of course, can have fields and rules of extraction, and then be able to utilize those multiple batch classes. So now you have the choice to say, no, I want to actually keep that in the global batch class. And then you can move that into your production system and migrate that global batch class, or just update that global batch class, and then have an effect on all the different batch classes that reference that document type. So if anybody has any questions about that or additional questions on that, but I thought that it was worth noting for those that are on our previous version, or maybe not taking advantage of that and have a lot of repetition inside of the batch classes that they're creating. So this next topic I wanted just to touch on, because this is something I've been working on. One of the issues that we've had with Ephesoft Transact is just its accuracy when it came to ICR. So, handwritten capabilities of Ephesoft, and whereas there are certain things that you can create fixed form rules if you're on the Windows version using RecoStar, and you can specify, this is handwritten, and if it has the boxes that separate each character, you can get a fairly decent, accurate result. We decided that we wanted to take a look at some other technologies that we can integrate to it. And so let's go ahead and move to a live demo of that. One sec. Okay. So what you can see here is that we just have a normal batch class, and that batch class has this I9. That's one of the forms that we typically would see or would be able to see. Does everybody still see
We're not seeing your screen,
PowerPoint, or do
Pat.
they?
We're just seeing your
Okay,
video right now.
okay, thank you very much. All right, so what we ended up doing here is modifying Ephesoft. And so when we find a low confidence in the OCR, so this could be used for a machine print as well, then we pass it off to Vidado and get it back. I made a kind of a different approach to demonstrating this. This is not how we implement it. So let me show you what that looks like. All right. So this is an I9 running through the process of Ephesoft. And you can, and hold on one sec, let me restart this. I must have tested it. That is not the values that come directly from Ephesoft. So what I did was I created these really loose rules. Normally when you're creating extraction rules, you want to be very specific because you want to make sure that you're getting an amount, or you're getting a date, or you're getting a social security number. In this case, I know that the OCR is going to come back really terrible. And so what I ended up trying to do was refining where I look, and so minimizing where I look. So they're making very thin type of extraction that is very specifically located near some sort of key term that is in a machine print. And then, from that point, be able to, let me open this up, find just the coordinates of some value. And so you can see here that if we looked at these values, that these are, some of them are legible, some of them are not, but what they have in common is that the actual values are pretty bad. And so let's go ahead, and what I did here was, instead of what I would, using a script before it gets to this screen, I created this little call out. And so we can say, send these values to Vidado. So this is happening in real time. And so this does go up to the cloud, but each value goes up to the cloud. And so it's really hard to then translate this back to a specific document, as you see to the right here. But it's just these values, these snippets that we're figuring out what those values are. And so where you can see, it's not all perfect. This is not correct, but you can see that it's way more correct than it was previously. And some of the things are kind of surprising, actually. There are some optimizations around there, in the sense of what comes back from Vidado is all lowercase. I just made them uppercase to make them look a little bit more pronounced. But you can see that in a lot of cases, these are really, in this case, this Steve on the second page was picked up, in which I'm very surprised at, and this Richardson, and some of the other values that I would never think that would actually come out inside of an accurate value. Are coming out really pretty decently, or at least a lot more decently. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show on here. We do have another question, so just going back to the question, and then I'm going to stop showing screen, go back to me. Okay, so can the assembler script undo the Lucene merging? Can you touch on that a bit? So it really depends on what you want to happen, and maybe you can be more explicit of what you're trying to achieve as an end result, because you definitely can make some modifications as to inside of an assembly script to say, I want to change, modify the way that Ephesoft thought it was. And so I should go back a little bit for those that are not familiar with what exactly this question is. One of the mechanisms that Ephesoft uses to do classification and assembly Classification is, what is each page? And so the default behavior of Ephesoft is that it'll look at each page and say, that's a first page of an invoice, that's a middle page of an invoice, that's the last page of an invoice. And then based on the first, middle, last determination and its highest confidence, they'll push those together as a single document. The question is that there are scripting capabilities inside of Ephesoft, and so can you make some modifications in that? And one of the modifications that we do with that today at Zia, and we have the Zia Ephesoft library for our customers. And this is just an example, maybe not what you're looking for, but we can. What we do is we do some pagination, and so what we'll do is we'll look at each page and say, was there pagination on that? So we'll look in certain areas for page 1 of 3, and then if we find page 2 of 3 after that, then we don't care what Ephesoft thought it was or how it actually created that. We'll just push those together, even if they thought it was 2 first pages. So that's just one of the mechanisms that you can use. The other mechanism that we've used before is keyword extraction. And so you can look at each page, much like I just mentioned for the pagination, and you can look for certain things. Like you can look for an invoice number, and once the invoice number changes, then you can say, oh, that's a new document. Or you can look for certain terms, because if you're in the mortgage world and you have an appraisal, that there are certain big players within the appraisal world, and if you find that their name on that, then you can actually just kind of sandwich those all together, even though the content on those pages is just a bunch of pictures of a house, the outside of a house, the inside of a house. There's really nothing to grab a hold of to say this is any sort of document, much less it's the same as the previous page. And so those are kind of a couple of the mechanisms that we use to override the default behavior from just Lucene. Hopefully that answers your question. Does it? Well, I guess you can put it on there if you'd like, so for the keyword approach, you would use a large dictionary. It really depends on the usage of that. It does have some performance implications, and so I would try to find it more generic capabilities of being able to utilize keywords, because you don't want to have 1,000 keyword page extractions, because that's going to, again, have a performance impact. But you might be able to look for generic ones. So if you want to take that one offline, shoot me an email. I'm Pat, P-A-T, at ziaconsulting.com, and you can just, and we can discuss it a little bit further. Yeah, I mean, using a lookup dictionary, you may be able to do that, but you may be able to act. One of the other mechanisms that we've actually used, just one more touch point, is that we have had some where we didn't want to leverage that page extraction, and so we ended up looking at each HOCR page. Inside of the blurb, they have essentially a span with just all the words on the page, and we found that we can write some faster code to open up that ASCII file, and then open up each ASCII file and look for certain terminology, as opposed to creating extraction rules for those. If you had some sort of lookup dictionary that had this very large set of rules, that might actually be better for that, where you can keep all of those, that dictionary inside of memory, and then do quick lookups by looking at those ASCII files. Just for those that don't have any background, when Ephesoft does OCR of each page, what is in the background of that is this what's called an HOCR file, which has two things. One of them, which is each word and its coordinates of that word, and then it has a blurb of just all the words on that particular page. So sometimes you can leverage that to create very explicit logic to be able to do that. But of course, this is a customization and not configuration. how do we get to the HOCR file? So the HOCR file is inside of the Ephesoft system folder. So let me just, let me give you the exact, I'll just look it on in the background. So if you go into the shared folders, and there's an Ephesoft system folder, and then underneath the Ephesoft system folder, there's a BI for each batch instance that's running through the system. Inside of there, there's just like a page 1 HOCR, page 2 HOCR, page 3 HOCR, and you can take a look at that and be able to see what's inside of that content. All right, good questions. And again, this is perfect. You know, I do want to go into and go these kind of questions and be able to, hopefully people are able to leverage this, that are not just the people that are asking the questions. I got one more. How in depth is HOCR customization? Doesn't it delete itself? It does. The HOCRs do get cleaned up after the fact. But of course, these would just be inside of the scripts for in-process modifications. And it's not too in-depth. You know, opening and reading an HOCR file, because they're already referenced inside of the batch.xml. For those that are not knowing of Ephesoft, each state of the batch that's running through, you can get a hold of, and that's presented inside of an XML file. And inside of that XML file, it says, you know, what documents are in there, what pages are in there, what, in this case, what HOCR file is referenced to that page, and then any sort of extraction information. It just keeps on building itself as it goes through the process of the instance. And so you can, by going through that batch XML, then you can look to see which HOCR is inside of that file or for a particular page, and so you can just iterate through those, load that ASCII file inside of memory, you know, look for whatever you're looking for, and then do whatever logic you're looking for. So it may be that you're looking for a particular vendor name, or some of the pagination, or, you know, the invoice number, or, you know, whatever it may be. It's just this span that you read inside of a string, and then just be able, or, you know, string buffer, because it could be fairly large for a page, and then be able to do whatever logic that you need to do. All right, so far those are the questions that we had there. Let me see if we can go back and, so see, I had a presentation the whole time. Although we're probably pretty much done at this point. Hold on, we're at the end of the slide. See, we are. So at this point, that's what I prepared for today. I was hoping for, you know, some more questions, but I'm glad that we had some. Are there any other questions? And let me see if there's anything else I have here, just for giggles, because I like to do things in real time. Well, that's what I have for this user anyway. So in that case, I think, Emily, you know, we can go ahead and wrap up. But what I would like to say, you know, this one took 30 minutes, and if that's the right amount of time for this particular broadcast, you know, that's fine and great. But what I do want to do is, anybody that's been here, you know, I had some questions from certain people, but anybody that was here just listening in, I really want to answer your questions, whether that be a high level of, you know, how would you architect this, or how would you integrate this, all the way down to what we're going down today, which is pretty deep about, you know, Ephesoft specifically, Ephesoft Transact specifically, and how would you integrate that, or how would you manipulate it, how would you configure it, how would you do something. I'm fine with any of those, but those that did not ask any questions, please let me know what format you would like to see, and if there's something that would be more interesting, so you can come here next week and come here the week after, whether it be going over more topical things around what was in the latest version of Ephesoft, or you know, what are the latest things that are going on at Ephesoft from a high level roadmap. Let me know, and I'll prepare appropriately. But I do want to thank everybody that was here. And Emily, could you wrap it up?
Actually, Pat, we did have 2 more questions come in. Do you want to
Oh, never
grab
mind.
those real quick?
Okay, hold on. Versioning, choosing the right doc to extract data from. Hold on. Okay, so I think, since I know who you are, what you're asking is that when you're dealing with a batch instance specifically, inside of Ephesoft to transact, how would you know when there's duplicates inside of there that you would, that this is the right one? And so there's been, there's a couple answers to that I have. One of them is that for certain documents, you can actually figure out what the document date is. And so normally, like if it's, processing a loan or of things of that nature where there's, different versions of the same document, that document date is so as long as it can be extracted or inputted by an operator, that would be the one that we really care about. That is the latest one. And then sometimes there's actually duplicates of that. And where what I've done that with that specific problem, when there's the same date, same document type, is then I would also look to the OCR confidence of that document as in its entirety. So, one to many pages, just like I would look to see what that OCR document confidence was, and how throughout its pages, I would aggregate it and come up with the confidence of that, and then have the best one, the highest OCR confidence, be the one that is the current document, and then mark it as a current document, process it in that fashion. The reason that sometimes they would come in with multiple is somebody would make, a fax copy of it, include it inside of that batch, but it's the same document. And so we're looking at the highest fidelity one. And that's really important, because what you can do is you can create logic later saying, hey, this is the only one that I really care about for operators to look at, as well as, this is the only one that really needs to be addressed by an operator. So that's how the tactic that we've taken for that particular issue. Have you developed something like that before? Water down data extraction, then feed it a full data extraction from the chosen documents? Yes, so I think that I accidentally, inadvertently kind of touched on that. But yes, then you can start creating rules. The big difference between what I talked to previously is that you may have to create your own custom validation logic. The way that validation logic works within the world of Ephesoft is that you can say, hey, like this is required, or this has to be this particular pattern, and that's when it would stop, is when it was truly expecting or something and didn't get it. In this case, that particular document type, that particular field, it may be duplicated amongst those two, and so then you would have to start creating your own scripting logic to say, when it is the current document, run this validation. Or you can use the out-of-the-box stuff and then just change the other document types to, like not current application form, or whatever that may be. And that way you can use the out-of-the-box validation. Hopefully that answered your question. Cool. Emily, am I missing things?
No, I think that's all the questions for today. Thank you so much, Pat, for doing this, and thanks everybody for attending. We are going to be posting the recordings of Pat's sessions on our website, and because you have registered for this first event, you're actually registered for all of the events, so no need to register again. Yeah, you never get rid of us. So no need to register again for subsequent events. You'll still get all of the reminder emails on that. If you do want to opt out of that at any time, you can go in and update your registration or cancel it, and you won't be seeing them anymore. But thank you all again, and we hope to see you next week. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you attending.